We're back again, and it's a Tuesday, and it's semi-final week, or it's the playoffs anyway, whatever they're called. 4020.live. I'm going to have to get the Super League website up to see what's going on. Phil, do we get some free booze, by the way? Do you know if we get some free booze?
I haven't heard. What is it expected? Is it traditional?
It's a new sponsorship. I should have told you. They've Loch Lomond
whiskey.
Yeah, they now sponsor. They're a Super League partner. That's the official phrase to use, isn't it? So
if they need our addresses, then we'll happily provide them.
There's going to be club branded spirits. It sounds like, so that'd be exciting. If it's like the days when I understand people used to get free cigarettes when everything was sponsored by cigs, then very much up for free booze.
Super League milk when we first started.
Super League milk, Super League pies. Remember those from a few years ago? They were good. Super League trucks, not so good.
Didn't go down well.
Don't get a free truck. It is semi-final week, or elimination week, isn't it? In the men's Super League.
Playoff week, yeah.
Playoff week. I haven't got a paper in front of me, so I don't know what's going on. Other than Wigan are playing Leeds, and it's Warrington versus Hull Kingston Rovers, because the great Dowell Powell end of season party, and it's been a bit of a damp squib, or squid as some people call it, at the Jungle. And we spent Leeds versus Hull. I wasn't that meaningful either the night afterwards. But Cass's season is over. I'm coming to the conclusion it may well be a good thing that everything starts again there at Cass next year. Lee Radford's in. Kenny Edwards is in, which is an interesting signing. But, everyone gets a fresh start. We'll see what happens at Cass next year. But they're not in the playoffs this year, so... oh, well, never mind. You're from Leeds, I'm from Wakefield. What are we talking about, Castle? They're done.
I just think they played the emotion card probably a little bit too early. I understood it was the last game for some very important people that have been there a long time, and Darryl included in that. But it seemed to me that a lot of what they were saying was last match. And it was almost, last home match. But the way they started the game, it was almost as if they drained themselves dry before they got on the field. Their second half comeback, again, was raising the question of, is this going to be the greatest ever? And I think they just ran out of steam. Warrington closed it down in the last 10 minutes, even though they were down a man, and won't play in the elimination playoff against Hull KR. But I think considering the season they'd had, the highlight probably was getting to Wembley for Cass. One place off the playoffs is slightly disappointing, but when you consider the injuries that everybody's had, but particularly Cass and in so many key positions, then to take it to within 10 minutes of the end of the regular season, I suspect their fans can rally around that. I think the only concern that they would have is clearly Darryl is the king of the area, isn't he? He's from there. He understands the DNA of what Cass fans want, this classy moniker that they've got, what that actually means. And I just don't know if they'll get that same thing from Lee Radford. They may be, a little bit more hard-edged. That may sacrifice a little of the entertaining style that they've become renowned for under Darryl, a lot more the off-the-cuff kind of stuff. You look at some of the players that Lee Radford's signing, he plays a certain way. Cass are going to play that way. If they're successful, I'm sure the fans will turn up in equally great number and cheer their guys on. If they do sacrifice a little bit of flair and it's not as successful, then it would be interesting.
At least the positive for Castlewood fans is they're not Hull FC fans who have ended the season. And here's the bizarre thing: Wakefield were rubbish for very much the majority of 2021. Would have ended in some kind of amazing run of form. And although finishing below Hull, it's like, we're great. And Hull are rubbish. Hull FC, the big conundrum, they are, they're below Hull KR, who don't have the same hype around them, but do have their own stadium and Craven Street and all that stuff. But Hull FC, we're asking these questions again. It's not even that they can't get to Old Trafford this year. They can't make the playoffs. And I know they've had injuries in key positions, but it hasn't worked out for Hull FC in 2021.
No, I think even their owner has now officially branded them as rubbish. And word on the street, and he does that every couple of seasons, so that's not a surprise. Word on the street is that they're looking to move on a lot of the players that have been core elements of their side over the past few years, reaching back to dual Wembley triumphs. So I think change is in the air yet again at Hull, and partly that, I'm sure that's the reason they don't achieve a level of which their recruitment would suggest they should, because there's always change in the air. There needs to be some stability. There's some big names who are on contract who they're trying to move on. There's some others who are coming off contract who they may not choose to re-sign. There's some young kids who they've got to make decisions on. Are they going to give them game time, or again, are they going to go for the big name who might not be the right blend? And it has ended up being a little bit of a disaster. When we saw the halftime score coming in the final match of the season at Wakefield, and you added that to be nilled at home the week before, you seriously wondered what had gone wrong. Brett Hodgson at the start of his reign was saying all the right things. Again, some of the guys coming in looked like they were really good signings. They did what they always do. They won a couple of games early in the season. Everyone said nailed on, going to be win the grand final this year. They've got Gareth Ellis on the coaching staff, who is arguably the most professional guy you'd ever wish to come across. And if the way he approached games as a player couldn't rub off on the guys he was then coaching, then they're the ones at fault, because in their armoury, they've got the right DNA to follow. So yeah, a big close season, and money again is the issue. What sort of recruitment is Adam Pearson going to be able to do when he's quite clearly outlined that finances aren't great there, and the issue with the stadium isn't good either. So yeah, you'd be worried on the way that they finish the season, what their projection's going to be for the next 2 years. Whereas, as you say, you look at their noisy neighbours who've gone from bottom to playoff. I'm not sure that they've got enough left, because again, they suffered a couple of really crucial injuries in that last game at Headingley as to whether they'll trouble Warrington sufficiently to win there on Friday night. But it's a great story nonetheless, on and off the field, and Hull can't replicate that at the moment.
Tony Smith, I think he could be coach of the year. I don't know. He certainly would put himself in contention with Hull KR's run to the playoffs. As you say, even if they do, that journey does end this week at Warrington, as many would expect it to do. They've certainly achieved above expectations going into this year.
And again, got a good mix of players. They've got some local young lads coming through. They've signed some players who perhaps other teams had discarded too early. And then they've got the superstars. The mix seems about right. You bring Lachlan Coote into what they've already got. A couple of other signings. I think they're building something that is sustainable there. Coach of the year for me would have to be Steve McNamara, because again, I think you do reward excellence, but also their journey from COVID territory and having to fly over and fund it all themselves, and finishing with their first ever League Leaders Shield, bringing through a lot of young players. I would give him that, whether they end up winning the grand final or not. The big worry for the Dragons is clearly Sam Tompkins limped off in a knee brace at Wigan last week, and they've been very this week about the extent of that injury. And you would hope that because they've now got the week off, he's having intensive rehab and it's not too serious, and he can play in what will be the biggest game in their history at home. Clearly, they got to the Challenge Cup final. That's massive. They went to Barcelona, had a record crowd, absolutely amazing. But this is going to be the biggest game on home soil in Perpignan. As we were saying last week, looks like everything's sold out, hospitality, corporate, tickets in the ground. So you just hope that all of the best players can play in that game, no matter who they're facing. Likely, if Warrington do beat Hull KR, that they're playing the winners of Wigan and Leeds, and either of those carry a story. Clearly, Wigan, the first team that they ever played in Super League, and the team that they played in Barcelona, and Leeds, a team who from fifth beat them in Perpignan, one of the year that they went on to win the grand final. So either way, I'd give it to Steve McNamara, but I think they have been a success story, and Hull KR not far from them, to be honest. It's been a great run.
Well, win Club of the Year. The Super League Awards are next week after. They're on Sky anyway. It's coming up. I didn't realise until today that the Woman of Steel is being voted on by a mysterious panel. So that's exciting, because obviously all the teams haven't played the same number of games. So if the players voted, it would be very complicated. But that's how I don't know how the men's one's going to work because all the players. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll find out. We'll all moan about whoever wins it anyway. Because I asked Courtney.
It's all virtual as well this year.
Yeah, is it like last year? It's coming from Brian Carney's front room. I do like how they show all these repeats of old Super League Superman. You can see Brian Carney developed through the years and his taste in hair and clothes, which always get people excited on a weekend. Wigan versus Hull. You say the Catalans playoffs game is going to be sold out. Wigan Hull won't be. I think we can make that prediction now. An end of a very short era at Wigan for Adrian Lamb at the DW Stadium is coming up. But Leeds, well, it's their time of year, Phil. This is their time again. Although they have got some injuries in key positions and such. So it's a big game. It's a big game.
It's a great game because it is two iconic names. It is a repeat of the very first grand final. They've had classic battles all the way through history, instantly recognisable to even people who only have a tangential interest in the sport. It's a saleable game. Really interesting because at this time of year you want people coming back, and in some ways it doesn't really matter who you didn't have during the year. If for the big games you've got the big guns, they've just named their squads, and Leeds have got 4 big forwards coming back. You include in that Michalewski and Zane Tetivano, and suddenly that dynamic has changed a little bit. The team that gets everyone back for the right time of year becomes a major threat. I think we've seen in the last 2 weeks with Wigan's results that they've got their defence absolutely right. That's the other thing you need to do come playoff time. It tends to be the teams that have the best defensive resolve get to Old Trafford. That's what Wigan did last year. They weren't, again, playing great expansive rugby, but they weren't conceding points either. So they're in the right sort of form that Adrian Lamb wants them to be in. But Leeds now have choices on the bench and could go with a very, very experienced team and size, which is the one thing, as well as halfbacks, that they haven't had this year. I find this one almost impossible to predict, but whoever wins it is going to fancy themselves if it is in Perpignan, because that's lose game. That's you turn up with all the experience of knowing how to win semi-final football against the side that's under pressure because the weight of expectation is on their shoulders. So I think this Wigan Leeds game is important, not just for who wins on Thursday, but actually whoever wins will feel confident they can get to Old Trafford.
And it's, of course, that great battle between Yorkshire and Lancashire, which, of course, might be coming back, which I think is what most people took out of our interview with Simon Johnson last week, which I'm not sure is what we're supposed to take out of it, but everyone's, no, don't be.
I think it could be East v West.
Come on, where the East? Come on, the East. Charity Shield, bring that back. That's all right. Yeah, play in somewhere random, but no. We'll talk about the championship later because we've got a guest who's been involved in the championship this year, so we can talk about that afterwards. You obviously were at the Super League Grand Final on Sunday, which I watched on telly, and it felt, watching on TV, like a major sporting event. Leeds Rhinos completing the wheelchair treble, having won the League Leader Shield and the Challenge Cup, beating Leyland Warriors in a cracking final. I think everyone who watched it, wheelchair rugby league, for the first time, as we have said all throughout this year, went, wow, why haven't we watched this before? And plenty of stories coming out of it. What was it like being there, Phil?
Astonishing. I mean, the first thing is the athletes are ridiculous. We've said it many an occasion, but Leyland were the underdogs. They went with the tactic of taking 9 and lots of rotation off the bench to try and keep their intensity up. Leeds went with, we've got 5 top line players. We're going to see if we can get 80 minutes out of them. They play together on such a regular basis. They know instinctively what each other is going to do. They're ridiculously, supremely fit people. And the plan was, if those 5 could stay on, they'd leave them on. That's exactly what happened. The 3 big players were really significant in the major moments. James Simpson was outstanding, the captain coach. Tom Halliwell, who didn't score, is a prolific scorer, but didn't in the final, but must have had an assist for at least half of the tries that Leeds scored. And obviously the man of the match, who seems to get it every time they're on television. Again, a hugely prolific scorer in the big games, but every one of their players contributed, and all of them carried injuries into games. Nathan Collins was the epitome of exhaustion on the way back. He could barely move. There was a frozen shoulder because Tom Halliwell had dislocated it in the semi-final, but played, and with 20 minutes to go, he couldn't move that. Jodie Boyd-Ward had fractured wrist the second time that she fell out of the chair. Can't speak to, and Ewan Clibbons, who is the one who I think would have been my nomination for man of the match. Again, everybody was saying afterwards, best game he's ever played. When he went in for his, I think it was his second try, which was a dramatic dive out of his chair into the corner, totally inadvertently, the Leyland covering player rode his wheel over his elbow. And again, he played on. It's just astonishing. And James Simpson himself suspected torn pec. So when you think that they all played with those injuries for the last quarter of the game, and yet it was that last quarter that they were the most dominant, I think Sky deserve enormous credit for making it into the kind of event that they like to show, all the singing, the dancing and the carrying on. Kyle Amor deserves huge credit for driving down St Helens to summarise, but not only did he do that, he went to watch Leyland train, just so that he could get a feel for how they played and understand who the personalities were in their team. Jenna Brooks hosted. I think all of that lent to it. But the main thing was that if you don't have a game of immense quality, the bells and whistles don't mean as much. Medway clearly is the home of wheelchair rugby league. Specifically marked out court, all the signs as you walk in that this is the headquarters of wheelchair. So it's like Wembley. Wheelchair teams will now aim to be in Medway at the end of the season, and that all worked. It was we banged on about, for want of a better word, which I don't really like, variant rugby league for a long time, but something that Simon Johnson said when he was on at the back end of last week, that growth is not always about geographics. It's about the different versions of rugby league that you can sell to broadcasters. And one of the reasons clearly that we get less money from Sky, even though they love what we give them, is because there's nobody else there to compete with them in the market. And if you can go to the pound shop and get exactly what you want and you don't have to spend a fiver, you will. But the word again is that they are both they and the BBC are bidding for the internationals at the end of the season, which is going to put greater value on them. And this is how rugby league will cash in on the great things that we know it stands for.
Kyle Amor was very good, and he has been good for the last few weeks on the women's games as well. Goes without saying, Mark was good. Said that already on Twitter, but it's difficult because you got to. I mean, we did that PDRL game a million years ago. You're trying to explain the rules which are slightly different to an audience who may not be aware, and to do that and call a great game is a very difficult skill, one I couldn't do. And it was good coverage all round, and I think people have again discovered something new, which is good. And congratulations Leeds on winning, congratulations Leyland on making it a great final, and you would hope that more professional clubs see something in that and get involved, because there's obviously something to be involved with, which is a benefit to your, want for a better phrase, brand.
Well, if you talk inclusive, which we do a lot, and rightly so, there is the perfect evidence of it.
PDRL Grand Final as well at the weekend, which we'll talk more about later in the week. Which seems to have kind of got lost in the shuffle this year. The whole PDRL sport just seems to have. It had a big blaze of glory a few years ago. Thanks in part to one player who played in the grand final. I saw Channel 4 tweeting their congratulations. But it seems to. I know obviously COVID's been a factor, and everything is restarting again this year, but it doesn't seem to have had the same billing as it has in the recent past. I don't know why. But we might get to.
I think part of that is it's been reclassified, and I think that's the thing. When you start something and you've got able-bodied players in there, and you've got to really then start to define how many and what they can do, and then you've got to have different classifications for the level of disabilities, so the teams even themselves out a little bit. And I think the sport has gone through all of that this year, and the International Rugby League have now codified the rules. So yeah, I think it was a case of sort of taking a step back to now be able to move forward again.
Congratulations, Warrington, who beat Wakefield in the final. I tried to watch that and the wheelchair and the women's game at the same time. You can't watch 3 games at the same time, which is a shame. But I did try to watch Keighley Doncaster, but as soon as Doncaster started winning, not Keighley Doncaster, Doncaster Hunslet, but as soon as Doncaster started winning, I turned over and went to sleep. Speaking of the women, so the men's league leadership was won by Catalans, wheelchair by Leeds, women's by St Helens, who beat Wigan at the weekend to the surprise of probably no one. But they are the league leaders, and they will face Castleford in the semi-finals on Sunday, which are on Sky. It's a busy weekend of Rugby League on Sky, to say they don't like us anymore, because the Championship game is on there as well. Saints versus Cass, Leeds versus York, 2 interesting semi-finals. The thing with St Helens is, and it's an interesting thing, this, I think they will be better. I'm going to assume they win their semi-final, so apologies to Castleford for knocking you out already. I think they will be better in the final than they played on Sunday against Wigan, because as tough as the fixture was physically and all that, and I don't think they got the same challenge from them. And I think it's something Courtney Winfield Hill mentioned earlier today as well in presser ahead of the semi-finals. The intensity of games hasn't been there in Women's Super League this year because of the disparity between not just the top 4 or 5, but the top 2 and the rest of the competition. And I think Saints will be better when they come up against whoever they play in the final. I don't want to jinx you by saying I've said who I think is going to be in the final already, but I think sometimes when they're up against weaker opposition, they overplay things and don't play as good as they can do, which seems bizarre when I think they won by 50 points again at the weekend. I saw it against Wakefield a couple of years ago when they won by 60 odd. Sometimes they play things that they don't need to. We're talking about a team who's got a try scorer who scored 22 tries in 10 games. I'm not trying to tell them, they can be. No, they can be better. I think they will be better. I look forward to seeing them against better teams.
They were really good in the Challenge Cup final when it mattered. So I think that, again, it's just doing whatever you need to do to get to the grand final. I think, again, home advantage is going to help them in the semis. They deserve it because they were the best team in the competition. But I suspect that emotion of being at home and getting to a grand final will carry them through. I genuinely don't know who they'll play. I saw Leeds and York play each other live the other week, and there wasn't a lot between them. But you would think that if it was a St Helens Leeds grand final at Headingley, which is what the form is saying it should be, both teams, but particularly St Helens, will have all the motivation that they need.
Well, earlier on today, I sat outside in the garden because we had the plasterer in, and I spoke to St Helens winger Danielle Bush.
First of all, semi-finals of the Super League, Women's Super League playoffs this weekend. How much are you looking forward to the game against Castleford?
Oh, I can't wait. So excited. I think obviously everyone at the club is as well, and especially for like myself, this is probably like my first proper year playing rugby league, and to be obviously involved in the Challenge Cup semi-final and final, and to be hopefully involved in this one. Yeah, just so excited, can't wait.
Yeah, we're a way away now from that final. It seems a long time ago. What was it like scoring in the final and lifting the trophy at the end?
Oh, I couldn't actually quite believe it. Like I said, it's my first ever Challenge Cup final, and I think obviously I dreamt that hopefully I would have got over the line, and I'd put myself in good stead for the past couple of games, getting over. But yeah, when Faye passed me that ball, and I just sort of strolled in, I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. I think watching it back, I actually got a bit emotional watching it. Like, oh my god, I can't believe I've actually done that. It was brilliant. Yeah, no, it was great. I loved it.
That's the first trophy. You lifted the League Leaders Shield at the weekend as well.
Yeah.
A comfortable win on the scoreline against Wigan, but it looked a tough game at times.
Yeah, it was. It was very physical, a very physical game, and obviously, playing on the wing, like, it looked a very physical game. That they did challenge us quite a lot, and I think as well for us, we've not really had like a lot of games over the last sort of couple of months, with breaks and with people having to give games up because of COVID reasons and everything like that. So I think obviously it was a tough game for us to sort of just get back into the stride of things as well. Just try and get back into the way that we play and stuff. But I think it's probably one of the most physical games that we've had sort of so far this year.
What was it like in terms of playing at the Totally Wicked Stadium and the support you had as well on Sunday?
Yeah, it was great. Especially like I say myself, I think the first game I'd played at the stadium was when we played York a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, to get back at the stadium again, it's great. It's a great venue. It's a massive pitch, massive stadium with loads of history behind it. But I think obviously with it being a derby against Wigan, we had really good support there, and and we felt it on the pitch. Every time we went over, every time we made a break, you could hear people cheering and everything like that. So it was great to be there.
And you're hoping for plenty of support on Sunday there as well, because you're actually at home for the semi-final against Castleford.
Yeah, no, we are. I think quite lucky, really. I think obviously we'd love the support, and if we can get as many people as we had there on Sunday back here this Sunday, I think it'll be another great occasion for us. Yeah.
On TV as well, so there'll be plenty of people watching from home. If people are thinking, what should I watch this Sunday, why would you tell them to watch Saints and Cass?
Oh, well, we've come up against each other a couple of times this season already, and it's been so physical. The games have been really, really tough, and both quality sides as well. We've seen Cass do it last year, and they've been really successful. This year I know they've lost a couple of players, but I don't think that's sort of taken away from how sort of tough these games are. And yeah, it's a semi-final. I don't really think there's nothing else to get behind it. Semi-finals are big games, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you finished at this point in the season, no matter where in the table, anyone could go ahead into this final at this moment in time. So yeah, I think it'll be definitely a good game to get behind.
So you're new to rugby league in a sense. What have you learned switching over from netball? What can you take from netball into rugby league?
Oh, there's quite. To be fair, I think from just like the basics, from like a catch and pass perspective, I think that's definitely helped me just sort of have a good sort of like ground, like base level. I don't think anything can prepare you to play rugby. I think some of my netball teammates would probably argue the fact that they said that I probably played netball like I played rugby at some times, but I think coming into rugby, yeah, it's definitely two different worlds. But then there's a sense of sort of quite the same. You've got the footwork, you've got the catch and pass. There is some similarities there, but I think the physicality you can't match it at all.
What's it like going out onto the field with the likes of Amy Hardcastle, Emily Rudge, Jodie Cunningham, these top world-class players who've been there and done it and seen everything?
Oh, it's amazing. I sometimes can't believe it, to be honest with you. Like I say, obviously this is my first proper season, second season playing rugby league, and I think when I, coming onto the pitch and learning the game off, not just them three players, but the rest of the 10-11 other players that are also in the England lineup as well. Talk about learning from the best, really, don't you? So I'm definitely getting the best experience possible. But yeah, to line up against them, and especially with Amy being on my inside as my centre, and then Emily Rudge being obviously as second row, having them telling me what I need to be doing, what I need to be looking at. Again, I don't think I could be getting any better sort of coaching, from on the pitch, I suppose.
She's got Amy 22 tries this year. You've got 10. You're not asking her to pass it a bit more to you, are you?
Yeah, she's just incredible, and she just scores them for fun. The way that she's just, oh my God, she's just an absolute, beast on the field. And yeah, I think on the weekend, I think the last try, I've watched it back, and I probably could have got over myself, but at the end of the day, I'm not really bothered who scores the try as long as we get over, so if it means that I pass it back on the inside, and if I think that Amy's got a better chance of getting over than me, then I'll pass the ball. It's at the end of the day, it's not who scores a try, as long as we score them. I think that's just the best thing.
I'd say obviously it's a team game. You've had that experience of lifting 2 trophies this year. How important is it to end the season winning that Super League Grand Final on the 10th of October?
Oh, massive. I think obviously the last season that we played in, we got into 2 semi-finals and got knocked out of them. So we know sort of firsthand what it's like to get into a semi-final and not make it the full way. Obviously, luckily enough, the first start of the season when we got into the Challenge Cup final, I think we got past that sort of, that bogey of not being able to get through a semi, and we got to a final, so we know we can do it. But yeah, I mean, to be able to get into the grand final, hopefully, and we obviously now our sights are set on obviously doing the treble. We've got the 2 so far this season, and I think we're not looking past the semis yet. We've got a tough game on Sunday against Cass, and I think obviously we're just preparing just to get past that first. Hopefully if we do, then we can obviously look on to that final. But yeah, it'd be absolutely amazing, especially coming back after the break of COVID, to be able to get all them 3 trophies would just be incredible. I think that's all we're sort of like thinking of at the club at the moment. So yeah, it'll definitely be amazing if we can do it.
I'm hoping for another open top bus tour as well.
Yeah, that was incredible. I couldn't believe we got the opportunity to do that. I remember we obviously all got invited down to go and parade the cup at Wembley. And just obviously as we got back on the coach after the men winning, Craig came onto the bus and was like, just let you know, Monday, if you can all make it, we've been invited to do an open top bus parade. And I think the whole way round, we were just like, mouths open the whole way around, like, are we actually doing this? Like, is this actually something that we're doing? So yeah, I mean, we'd love to do another one of them. It was great.
Danielle, thank you very much for your time. Best of luck on Sunday, and fingers crossed, perhaps we'll be seeing you in the final in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
She's scored 10 tries in 10 games this season, Phil. And the good news for her is, as you mentioned, she's on the outside of Amy Hardcastle, who's the player who scored 22 tries in 10 games, which, frankly, is a ridiculous number. But there should be a good couple of semi-finals, again, on the telly this week. Saints and Cass, Leeds and York. Interesting stories coming into them. Hopefully we'll hear some of the other players ahead of the game on our channels here. But again, the women's game grows in terms of coverage, and we'll see what happens from that next year. But the semi-finals weren't on telly last year. Now we've got the semi-finals and the final, and the Shield semi-finals this week: Featherstone versus Bradford, Huddersfield versus Warrington. I think Fev will be in the final. Can't call the other game, so that's good, and we'll get a good final of that competition ahead of the grand final in a couple of weeks' time as well.
And again, 2 new teams who've actually emerged from the most difficult of seasons to put themselves within 80 minutes of a final, which is fantastic. I think showing the 2 semi-finals is great context for the grand final. And that's the credit to the women's game this year. I think everybody would admit that it's been so much harder than they thought it was going to be. A lot of what they were planning was around participating in a World Cup later in the year as well, which has clearly been postponed. But what we are going to get is 2 semi-finals that will give us stories for the final. And I can't wait. Now, what better way to spend a Sunday afternoon than consecutive women's matches on your major broadcaster?
Yeah, then on the Saturday, as mentioned, we've got the men's championship elimination things with the surprise package: Batley Bulldogs versus Bradford and Halifax versus Whitehaven. So we've got to see Mount Pleasant on the telly again, but the John Keir derby there at Mount Pleasant, and Bradford having been well beaten by Whitehaven on Sunday in a ridiculous comeback by the Cumbrians, who are obviously the talk of the championship at the minute. Again, another couple of intriguing games for people to enjoy on a Saturday afternoon.
absolutely cracking matches that, again, you're going into them going, I can make a case for all of the 4 teams in it. Batley and Whitehaven been fantastic this year. Batley maintaining their form. Whitehaven, the whole KR of the Championship, bottom at the end of last season, making the playoffs with an amazing run of games this year. They will not lack confidence, either of those 2 teams. Pressure really on Bradford, because everybody says whatever new structure and format we have, the potential in Bradford is of a Super League team. We know they're rebuilding. We know the issues that they've had with their ground, but they will be expected to win, and they're going to their absolute neighbours and in what will be a hostile environment to play a team that will not show them any respect whatsoever, nor should they. So that'll be a great game. And then Halifax aside, again with great tradition behind them, playing a Whitehaven team that will not care who they're playing or what ground or even what time of day. So yeah, can't wait for those. And again, the fact that Sky is showing them, because it builds up to the eventual £1 million game and the promotion of a team to Super League, assuming that there is no obstacle thrown into who it might be at the very last minute, which we're not going to go down the road of. And good to see Toronto Wolfpack playing a game this weekend, even though it was slightly different to the last one they played, and a slightly different Wolfpack as well. But 1,500 people there apparently watching a community game effectively, which is great. But yeah, the added exposure that we've had with wheelchair this week, and then Championship and Women's coming up at the weekend, leading into the really big, meaningful games at the end of the season, actually all augurs well. I'd be going back to Sky now saying, would you like to actually put that missing note back on the check? Because we are delivering.
How many cardboard people in Toronto do we know?
All drinking beer.
Got to throw it in there for the people. It's interesting because it appears that another code of rugby have lost their highlights program on Channel 5 this year. So, sometimes we do punch above our weight, but maybe we just want some more money for that. That's all we're saying, because I'm sure there'd be plenty of other sports who would love their second tier playoffs on telly, their wheelchair game on telly, and their women's games on telly. So we're doing okay. Just can we have some more money, please? That's the general consensus. Will it be Toronto? Will it be fair? Well, they'll be watching this week and hoping that the 4 teams involved knock 7 shades out of each other before they resume competition next week. We're going to speak to someone who's been involved in the Championship this year, who's had an interesting path through the world of rugby league. Currently on the bench assisting James Ford at York. It's Jack Howieson. Jack, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Where do we start? 2021, what a stranger it's been. I guess a year in which you're expected to be somewhere else than where you are.
Yeah, well, it's been crazy, really. The last sort of two years for me have been completely upside down. I would never have thought I am where I am, and what's happened. So it's probably not as I'd expected it to be even 5 years ago. So yeah.
You've had quite a journey in rugby league, starting off, as people have noticed, that accent's not one from the M62. How did you get into the sport in the first place?
Well, I'm from Hemel Hempstead, so obviously rugby league's been in Hemel for pretty longer than I've been born, I'd imagine, so over 40 years. So, yes, I started playing at school, to be honest. My PE teacher played at Hemel Stags and played rugby league and rugby union in the schools in Hemel, and he invited me up to go and play at Hemel when I think I was about 14 or 15, and they just entered the English schools competition. So we were Hemel schools, we were playing against Oldham schools, Bradford schools, and getting a bit of education on how to play rugby league at the time, yeah.
Played for Scotland as well, so your history is one of development. You've always been involved in wider horizons than perhaps the game has traditionally had. With the benefit of your experience, where do you think the sport is at the moment? Bearing in mind that you were this eager, young, fresh-faced schoolboy who'd never heard of the game 20 odd years ago, went through the Rugby League conference. You know, everywhere you've been, we could term development. Are we doing it well enough still further down the track?
Probably a simple answer is no. I don't think we probably are doing it well enough. I don't think we've progressed a massive amount from the 20 years that I've played the game. Also, in 25 years I've played the game. There has been strides forward, but it seems like it's sort of 3 steps forward, 1 step back. But I wouldn't know, even though I've been involved in development clubs probably since for 25 years, I probably wouldn't know the answer of how to do it. There's lots of different techniques have been tried, and I don't think it's a lack of effort from certain parts of rugby league, but I just don't think we've quite got it right consistently over that period, really.
I mean, before we talk specifically about York and the difficulties you faced this year, but the potential that the club's got moving forward, there's all this talk at the moment about probably disbanding League One. Clubs like Coventry have made great strides in their community over time, perhaps being denied access to the top table. Your own former club, Hemel, having a licence to be a development club in League One and no longer there. Things at Gloucestershire, who we've seen this week, are trying to go semi-professional on the women's front, but obviously have dropped out of that lower strata. Are you disappointed? If I put you in charge now, gave you the Simon Johnson role, would you allocate extra funding to those areas because you know what they can bring the sport?
Yeah, I definitely would, to be honest. I mean, if you look at what Alan Robinson's doing at Coventry, it's amazing, really. I mean, when I was in charge at Hemel, I would have classed Hemel and Coventry being a similar standard, a club at a similar level. And that's probably three years ago, and which probably was, there's 3 or 4 clubs there in League One which didn't compete with the top of League One. Whereas what Alan's done over the last 3 years has turned Coventry into what was a development team into a serious League One team. I think they've beaten Hunslet, they've beaten Keighley, they've beaten a few other the top teams, the traditional sort of best teams in that competition. So I really do feel that we talk about Coventry as a development area, but I don't see them as a development team anymore. I see them as a League One team on the same level as some of the clubs mentioned there.
With your experience of Sheffield and all the success you had there, would you class them as a development club? Because again, if we get too precious about our Yorkshire-Lancashire borders, South Yorkshire obviously gives us a nosebleed going that 35 miles further south. And you had some fantastic times there, but again, do you think that they've been left hung out to dry a little bit?
In a way, it's hard because I think obviously rugby league's been in Sheffield and it's been Super League, and and if they've been successful in the Championship over a certain number of years, I think they weren't helped out by the Rugby League when they lost their academy licence. Because if you look at the players that have come through Sheffield and that are playing in the Championship, in Super League, at different places, there has been a number of players that have been developed through that system. I think what you've seen since they took away that academy system is there hasn't been any players come through Sheffield. So you might get players playing at local amateur clubs. They'll either go away and play it. For Corey Hall, for example, at Leeds, he came from Sheffield, came from the amateur clubs. He should now be playing Sheffield Eagles, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean? We've had him on loan from Leeds at York, and he's been an absolutely brilliant job, and he'll be a future Super League player. But realistically, he should be playing at Sheffield Eagles where he's not getting in the Leeds squad. But because of the route he took, because there was no opportunities for him in Sheffield, it's taken him to Wigan, taken him to Leeds and other places like that. So I think taking away the academy from, I think the Midlands Academy, which the Eagles got a few of their players from, people like Ryan Miller got taken away as well. So the pathway for players from Sheffield, there isn't one at the moment. And I think the Rugby League could help quite a bit more with that.
You've got a nice new stadium at York. We've been there. It's nice and shiny and new, and it's a great facility. And I guess that's one of the problems Sheffield have had over the last few years. Is waiting for that new facility to be built and being completely nomadic, going from one place to the next, season in, season out. Yeah,
it's been quite a depressing time, really. The last 4 or 5 years for Sheffield, as a former player and probably a supporter of the club. It's been. I've not managed to get to many games myself. I live in Sheffield. I have done for 20 odd years. And I haven't managed to get to many games just over in Doncaster. Even before that, when it was at Helens University, it was hard for them with no home. It's hard for them to generate a crowd, really, because if they put a massive effort into trying to get people into come watch them, they're not offering the sort of elite level experience that you'd want to be offering someone in a top championship game. So when you're playing on temporary stands or you're playing at a university pitch, I think they've just been waiting really to get all the stadium ready, the ducks are aligned, and then they can start really hammering down. But obviously that's taken probably 4 or 5 years longer than they wanted it to.
Yeah, that word legacy is a great one. I love seeing that.
I don't believe, even though I've seen the stadium is getting built, and at the moment in time, I'm still a bit sort of pessimistic whether it will actually happen, but I'm sure it will.
Look, they'll get built before Wakefield. That's the depressing thing for me, but never mind. York have that facility. Obviously, the roots of rugby league in York go back a long time. The current club is new, but you're building something in York, and obviously not been the easiest of seasons on the field this year, but signs of growth across the men's and women's game in the city.
Yeah, well, I think the stadium's absolutely brilliant. You said you've been there. It's like it's brand new. Everything's sparkly and nice, and it's been thought out really well. And it's a perfect size for a rugby league game, and it's a good location with all the amenities around it. So I think first of all they've got that absolutely spot on. Obviously, it would be nice if COVID had been around. You could have got fans in the stadium for the full season. I think it would have been by the end of the season, it would have been a massive atmosphere in there. It would be absolutely brilliant to play there and to coach there. This last weekend gone, we played London. I think we got sort of like a little glimpse of what it can actually be like there, and it's really set up to have a Super League team in York, because I don't know what the crowd was of the day. There's quite a lot of people there. A full stand, pretty much full, playing London. There was loads of corporate stuff going on. There was kids playing at half time all across the pitch. There was the women's game straight after. Lots of people stayed to watch the women's game, which is amazing. And the women's team are playing well and competing as well. So I think they've got pretty much everything there ready to go at the moment, apart from the league position, finishing the league position, which I think it will come. That I think that's just inevitable. Once they've got everything else in order, once we get a good pre-season with the same team without injuries under a belt, we'll go strength to strength.
You mentioned the season on the field, and I think first thing we must do is pay tribute to Whitehaven, who's run for the second half of the season their unexpected victory at Bradford, and that's historically speaking, not that they didn't deserve to with this current team, that's got them to the playoffs. I think, we've all been amazed at the run that they've been on, and are hoping that with Barrow's promotion, it's potentially a rebirth of Cumbrian Rugby League, a little bit like we're seeing in France at the moment. I don't think many of us before the season would have predicted that York, maybe Widnes, London themselves wouldn't make the playoffs. Does that tell us how good the championship has been this year, even allowing for the injuries that you particularly had and in the halfbacks more than anywhere else? Yeah,
I think the championship's been good for a number of years. I think there's always teams in there that you always have a couple at the bottom that don't really compete, but anything from the bottom to upwards, it can be a bit of a lottery about if you're going to win week on week. I think the difference this year, you've obviously got Toulouse and Featherstone, who are by far probably the best teams in the competition, and prove that. You've got a couple of teams with Swinton and Oldham who've struggled a little bit. I think the mid section of the championship there is really competitive, and games can go either way depending on lots of different factors, really. And I do feel that if a few different things have gone our way in the season, we might have snuck a few wins that were very, very close games, which might have had the final result of us hitting the playoffs. But then, like you said, with the Cumbrian teams, how well they've done. I mean, we went up to Whitehaven, and we got absolutely hammered up at Whitehaven, completely dominated. And if we're all pretty honest, we didn't really expect that with the squad we had available. I think as well, if you look at Batley, how well they've done, I think sort of Whitehaven have overshadowed Batley a little bit. Batley have come in, they come fourth? They came fourth, didn't they, Batley? Fourth, yeah, which is a massive achievement for them, which I don't think you would have predicted that at the start of the year. So I think probably ourselves, like I said, Widnes and London have probably underachieved a little bit. You've got teams in there definitely that would be seen to overachieve, but I think with it being part-time rugby, even if you've got lots of big names, lots of experience, and lots of good players, obviously, I think part-time rugby in itself can be a leveler anyway. So.
Do you think this was always going to be a season of consolidation for you? I mean, I wouldn't say you overachieved last year. You achieved what you deserved to achieve, but going into a new stadium, quite a big turnover of players, as you've said, a lot of experience brought in. Was the expectation more about just saving your more than saving your place in the championship, but consolidating yourselves as a club at that middle tier?
I don't think so. I think we definitely had ambitions to be at the top of the competition, because I think the players we'd signed and the experience we've got in the squad, I think we definitely, if we could have that team out, our best 1 to 17 out every week, I think we would have been top 4, top 5. We played near the start of the season. We played Featherstone in a really, really close game, which we lost in the last seconds of the game. A charged down drop goal and a length of the field try, and then the hoot goes. I think on that day, that game could have gone either way. And I think at that point, you win that game, get a bit of confidence, you win another game, 2 or 3 more wins, and we're probably maybe in 4th position. So I don't think it was. We saw ourselves as being a team that should make the playoffs, really. Definitely a top 6 team. I just think there's lots of factors that went against us, which isn't really an excuse, because they obviously happened to lots of other teams as well. I mean, the issues you get with COVID and people isolating and not being able to play, the issues you've got with people not having a proper off season, and coming back to playing, or a long off season, or not used to being in the contact, and picking up niggling injuries, and some serious injuries picked up along the way as well. So it's just been a hard slog, really. So I'd call it really for this season.
It has been. It feels like it's been a really long year. One of the highlights, obviously, was getting to Wembley, which we were on our way down to the stadium on the Saturday morning. We didn't know if the game was going to be played or not. What was that like as an experience?
Yeah, that was an interesting time. I mean, you couldn't write it really. We turned up at the stadium to leave on the day before. We were going down on the Friday night. Friday during the day, and someone got a positive lateral flow test, and we had to find out who was their close contacts. Obviously, they're out of the game, just about to get on the bus, and Jordan Balbinson gets a phone call from his boss saying there'd been an outbreak of COVID at work for him. Luckily, he hadn't got on the bus at that stage, so he then had to go and self-isolate, and you lose them. And even to the point where we get down to Wembley and we're in the morning, we have to all lateral flow again. So, and obviously, us knowing there had been positive cases in the camp, is that there's a likelihood that people haven't shown up on the lateral flow. So we could have been in the morning of the game down to 15, 13 players, So it was hard to prepare. It was very hard to prepare for that game. And I don't think either team would have got the preparation they wanted to. But saying that, it was an unbelievable experience to go out of Wembley, and we played well on the day, and we just probably outclassed a bit by Featherstone. But it's just great to have all the fact to experience that. Even if I wasn't playing myself and just coaching, having all those fans there and the atmosphere, staying to watch the game afterwards was great as well.
As you say, with all the preparation issues before the game, it's a credit to both yourselves and Featherstone. You put on such a cracking and entertaining fight. Yeah,
it's good. It's good. It's high scoring. Yeah, it may be better for the neutral watching it than the coaches watching it. I'm always on the headset, so I just get abused by Thordy for 80 minutes. So it wasn't too good for me, but it was. It was a really, really good experience. And I'm really. I know because of Sheffield were on it. I think a couple of years before, and then in between, and they played afterwards. They obviously are specifically to players who played for Sheffield, and they absolutely loved the experience. But I think they've got it right putting it before, because I think that just made it that little bit better. It's just a shame we didn't win it, to us.
Yeah, I think we were the last people leaving the stadium when Sheffield won it, and it's much better beforehand.
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned, obviously, players having jobs in the real world. It must have been a surprise that there haven't been more games called off this year, thanks to COVID. And we've seen it plenty of times in Super League, and they're full-time professionals. But in the Championship itself, it doesn't appear to have been, obviously, with regards to, apart from people going to Toulouse, that big an issue as it has been elsewhere.
Yeah, I think there've been a couple. I think we had maybe 2 games. Well, Toulouse called off, and we had our Sheffield game called off. So it didn't really affect us massively. I don't know why that's been what was the case. If I'm honest, maybe we had options of bringing in dual reg players from Super League clubs that maybe weren't playing, which was good. You could bring people in for 1 week. I think, 2-week loans. I think was the minimum, which worked quite well for us. We utilised it quite a lot with injuries as well as COVID. So having that option for championship teams was good. I think probably Super League struggled with was without having reserves or they really couldn't get players from championship clubs to come up to cover a couple of weeks. So I think that's probably why they struggled a little bit.
You went for experienced players in your recruitment for 2021. Clearly some disruption again with injury, that not all of them played, I would imagine, the kind of game time that you wanted to. But alongside that, you brought some youngsters through from the York area, and that must give you some heart for the future.
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 young lads who've been training with York for quite a while. I mean, 40 spotted them play through they've got a program that's similar to a scholarship called the Excel program, and I think these are 3 kids that didn't get picked up by other scholarships, and they've been training with York, I think, for maybe 2 full seasons now, and I really do believe they've got a big future with them. So it's Toby Warren, who's a big, strong, sort of rangy back rower who's played the last 2 games and played well. He may still be 17. Might have just turned 18, possibly still 17. AJ Towles, who is a winger, who played his debut this weekend against London, and he pulled off one of the best catches over his head I've seen in the Championship, if I'm honest, maybe in Super League. So he's got lots of raw ability, and he's a really good kid. And probably the standout was Miles Harrison. He's played fullback. He had a big impact when he came on. He started the game at Newcastle. Broke the line, set up a try, and was, I think, man of the match performance there. And again, he's had a really, really solid game at fullback this weekend against London. So I think me and Fordy were talking about why we feel they've sort of maybe been so successful. I think the way Fordy's done it with them is had just the 3 players sort of training pretty much with the first team squad for the last couple of years, rather than it being a reserve team or an academy team that train separately. They've sort of been exposed to that sort of coaching and that sort of environment for 2 or 3 years, which they now find probably normal, and they don't know anything different. So I think that the progression, I've only been there this season, the progression I've seen in them this season has been massive. Absolutely, really good.
And some of your experienced guys are retiring at the end of this year, or have now that you've played your last game. Danny Washbrook, Ryan Atkins. How do you go about replacing them? Are you going to go down the same road of experienced guys dropping out of Super League? Are you going to perhaps go for younger, maybe academy type players from Super League, or are you going to trust it now to the process that you've set up with bringing your own guys through?
You're probably asking the wrong person here. So I'm not involved in the recruitment, if I'm honest. So it's Fordy and John take part of that. I'm just assistant coach, so I just basically try and pass on the message from them. So the policy on that will be down to them. So
just get the blame for what happens on the field. That's
we're going to mess up substitutes, or they're not listening to what I say, so it's my fault. That's what I get blamed for.
He's obviously a very highly regarded young coach, is Mr. Ford. What's he like to work under?
Well, I've known Fordy for a long time, because he played at Sheffield with me, and I was captain there when he came in. So it's a strange relationship, because when I'm a couple of years older than him, so I was a senior player at Sheffield, but I was still quite young, you see. So he probably would have seen me as a senior player. I was the captain, and just as time's gone by, when I go back to now come to York, and he's an established head coach with a really good reputation, and he's probably one of the best young coaches in the game. I do believe that. So I kind of, from being his captain, I just kind of now more use him as a mentor, if I'm honest. I think he's taught me an unbelievable amount about tactics, how you play the game. He's a bit like the Rain Man for Rugby League is for this. So he's like, he knows absolutely everything. He knows exactly what he wants to happen in absolutely every single scenario on the pitch. So learning some of those things from him is absolutely brilliant. So he thinks about things in more in depth than I have done, and I think really he has got a massive future. And I think he's already for me he's already a Super League coach. The amount of depth that he goes into, and the preparation, the sort of reviews of the games we've done, and the preparation for the games you're going to play, it's beyond anything I've seen in the Championship.
It's linked with every job that's got in the Super League, so I know that one day, sooner rather than later, it will be up there. I mean, fingers crossed, obviously, with York themselves. Phil mentioned earlier Scotland International. What was that like as an experience? Obviously, we were all looking forward to seeing Scotland in action in the World Cup this year, but not to be. What was it like pulling on the Saltaire of Scotland?
Yeah, but I absolutely love playing for Scotland. Actually, one of my first experiences playing rugby league was for Scotland students. So my dad's Scottish, so they found out when I was playing for my college team. It was at West Herts College when I was 16, and they were having trials for the South of England students team. So even though we were a college team, they put us. There's not a massive at that time. Wasn't a massive number of players playing in the South, so we went forward for that. And from that, I met John Risman, who was coaching Scotland students. So he kind of pulled me in and asked me to go for a trial with Scotland students, and I managed to go play for them when I was still at college at 17. So it was like one of my first real experiences playing for Scotland. And I absolutely loved it. And again, still another development area. There were lads from the north of England involved in that who had Scottish heritage like I did, and there's still lots of players who were born Scottish with proper full Scottish accents. So, that was a good experience as well. So, but yeah, no, I love playing for Scotland. I managed, and then I played. I think around 2002, 2003. I got my international call up for Scotland and played most years up to I think 2011. I finished, so I was involved in the squads or in and out of the team. The way it works with Scotland is if there's not a World Cup year, I would have been starting front rower. But as soon as it's a World Cup year, I'll probably move down to sort of number 23, 24 in the squad. So it was good. I managed to go to the World Cup in 2008, which was in Australia, which was actually a brilliant experience. So yeah, I love playing for Scotland, and it's something I'm quite proud of.
John Risman would be another character that you've come across in the game, but Bob Brown at Hemel, I suspect, left his imprint on you. One or two others you've come across?
Yeah, Bob's great as well. I mean, it was strange with Bob actually because I left Hemel when I was 18 to come to Sheffield to go to university. So I knew Bob from being obviously sort of 14, 15, 16 up to 18. And he's always been great with me. He gave me some working on the bar, even though I was too young to at the time, collecting glasses. They even had a thing at Hemel, you had to have a night watchman because of the area of Hemel it's in. They couldn't get insured unless someone was there 24 hours a day. So some of the young lads would get 20 quid for staying overnight at the rugby club and keeping it safe. So he got the job doing that. And obviously I went away to university, and then I didn't see him again probably for another at least 10 years. And then obviously got a bit close to him again when I took over at Hemel as head coach there. So, but yeah, Bob's a character, definitely. In
terms of where we go from here, nobody knows what the exact distributions are going to be, and clearly, as you've said, you leave all that to people like John Flatman at the club. But if we were going to have these two divisions of 10, and you had to make your case for why York should be in there, what do you reckon would be the great selling point?
I think York sells itself. It's not Heartland Rugby League. It's a bit out of sort of the West Yorkshire sort of Leeds sort of area. It's a bit further away. It's got a great stadium. The amateur teams are doing really well in York at the minute. They've got a women's team that's at the top. They've got great training facilities. They've got Super League standard stadium, Super League standard training facilities. They've got a Super League women's team. They're bringing players through from York and giving them their debuts. I think it sells itself, to be honest. The only thing, like I said, is that at the moment is they haven't been finished. They haven't won the championship, but haven't been in a playoff final, which I think once they do that, which they will do at some point because they're only going up, it sells itself for me. Really, I think most people agree with that once they've been there and they've experienced it.
You've obviously been up against them this
If
year.
they can find the car park, yeah.
Say again, sorry?
If they can find the car park, yeah.
Well, I struggled with that the first time, so yeah.
Well, it's good to know it's not just us then. You've been up against them both this year. How good are Featherstone and Toulouse? And if either of them, of course, it may not be either of them that get promoted to Super League, how do you think they'll be able to acquit themselves in the top division?
It's a hard one, really. I mean, we played Featherstone. I think it was the first game of the season we played Featherstone. Not Featherstone, sorry, Toulouse. So we were both pretty sort of not fully cooked, really, I think, at that stage. It was reasonably close. I think they beat us by 20 points in the end, but it was close for 60 minutes. But they obviously had quite a lot. They're full time. They had quite a lot of class in the team, and they had a big set of forwards that really took it to us, if you want it. But I think Toulouse would be fine if they went to Super League. I think they've got enough. I don't think they would keep the squad they've got now. They'd obviously keep the nucleus fit. They'd obviously bring players in. I think they've probably got a bit of money there. And I think probably they'd have even more money there if they went into Super League, obviously. So I think Toulouse would be, if Toulouse gets promoted, I think they'd be fine. They invest in the right areas. It's hard to stay in Super League, obviously. It's hard to stay in the Championship and get promoted from League One. So it's always going to be a challenge. But I think they're probably, in my limited opinion of it, probably better set up to go up and stay up. I mean, Featherstone have been, like I said before, Featherstone and Toulouse have been the best two teams in the competition, and there isn't much between them on the field. It's just in my opinion, I feel that I think Toulouse have probably just got a little bit more than them and probably got more longevity if they did stay up.
We don't know who will be in Super League next year. Where will you be next year? Do you know what you'll be doing in 2022?
I don't actually yet, no. So the season's just finished, and I spoke to Fordy on the last game and just said, do we know what's happening next year? And they're going to do a full review this week and then sort it all out, really, I think. Obviously, some of the players already signed up and some are still in negotiations. It's just that time of the year when no one really knows what's happening. So I'm sure I should find out in the next couple of weeks. So.
Very unsettling for everybody, clearly, and the game as a whole at the moment. And I know we haven't got long left, so I just wanted to ask you that: is it true that Adam Cuthbertson learned everything he knows as regards his offload game from watching you play?
If he had ever watched me, I think that had been the case. He probably didn't know I existed, but yeah, I'd agree.
And how do you know when he's awake?
We don't worry. Yeah.
It's got to be the most laid-back man you've ever coached.
Yeah, no, he's a great bloke as the Cuthbo, and he's very laid back and he's a good guy, and one of the most skillful front rowers I've ever coached. And I don't think he knows what he's going to do sometimes. So yeah, he's a really good lad.
And you mentioned earlier about the women's team and the fact that you've had a couple of double headers, which really seems to have worked and probably is a template for other clubs as well. How important is that, do you reckon, for the club going forward, that you're giving equal billing to the men's and the women's team, and you are attracting a new and different type of audience because of that?
I think, John, I said to him at the time, it's one of the smartest things he's done is investing in the women's team. I don't think maybe I don't know the women's game very well, but I don't think other clubs maybe have invested as highly in it. And what he did by putting some emphasis on it, lots of the better players wanted to come and sign. So I think they did have a bit of a raid of some of the other clubs and attracted the women to go to York. I don't think there's again, I'm not an expert on this, but I don't think there's a massive amount of money in the women's game for the players themselves. So it's really important. If you want to attract the best players, is you make the environment that they're in as good as possible. And the training facilities, they share facilities with the first team, the men's team use. So they get all the access that we get to the facilities. The stadium is brilliant. And obviously having these double headers, they also get some crowd there watching them as well. So if I was a women's player and I was looking at a club that supported the women's game, it'd be a club that I'd want to go to.
Massive amounts of money might be overplaying it.
I know what money's in the lower leagues in for the men's game, so I can only assume what it is. Yeah.
What are you hoping for then in 2022? Obviously, to be in employment would be a main one, but for the game as a whole, because it is an uncertain time and no one seems to know what's going to happen next.
My experience with rugby league is always an uncertain time, so it's nothing new. If I'm honest, it's always the time of the year when nobody knows where they're going, and it tends to sort itself out. But I just feel like there needs to be big changes in the game. If I'm honest, I think it needs somebody to say this is the direction we're going. This is how I see the game being in the next 10 years, and get everyone on board. If teams aren't on board, we'll say this. Someone with strong leadership say this is exactly what's happening. So either you're on board or don't jump on, and because this is where we're going. And I think if we had that and there was some sort of, so I don't know. I read a lot of stuff on Twitter and I read a lot of the news and about rugby league, and I don't know if there is a written down plan of what they want the game to look like in 10 years' time. And for me, for any business, if you haven't got a plan for where you're going to go, how you're going to get there, it seems like they're just treading water the whole time and fighting fires, which you can survive. And I'm not one of these people who think the rugby league's going to die. It's not going to die. It's always going to be there. But it's just at what level it will be there. And you look at games like rugby union, and just going from strength to strength, and coming out of this. I don't know if you've seen the 12s competition that rugby union are coming out, which is just a blatant play to try and take rugby league over. So they need to look at it and they need to have a plan, decide what it's going to be, and stick with it for a good 10, 15 years. So I was a fan of franchising, so I didn't think we should have gone away from that. But that's my opinion.
That'll upset half of our audience, but the other half will they'll be behind you on that, because
they'll never find me in Sheffield.
Phil, have you got anything else left to ask, or have we covered everything?
The only other thing I was going to say is the elements you were saying that come together across the men and the women. You've recently re-signed your deal with York St John University, and I think that when John Flatman was on, he was saying that had been really important, as well as giving you all the facilities that you need to be a top class team.
Yeah,
that is a key element of what you're doing.
Yeah, the facilities they've got at York St John's at Hexbury Road, it's brilliant. There's a full size 3G pitch there, with a gym right next to it, all brand new. There's meeting rooms, physio rooms. It's essentially a Super League standard training ground. So it's a massive. I'd imagine it's a massive turning point for players when they come and have a look around. I mean, experiences I've had, obviously, it's not pretty normal. With obviously Sheffield have struggled a little bit for facilities, but we used to train at 3 different. They still do train at 3 different locations, so a different location each day, and that in itself poses logistical nightmares of getting people to different places, and then maybe the gym might be a bit of a drive away to get to the gym, and before you know it, you've got players there for 2.5, 3 hours. When at York, you go to the gym, you walk outside the door, you're on the field, so you can have groups in different areas and rotating around. It just makes things a lot smoother and a lot easier, and makes your time management a lot better. And
you get the smell of chocolate wafting over as well, which is never a bad thing.
Yeah, you do actually. Yeah, I've noticed
that. Brilliant, Jack. Thank you very much for your time. All the best for whatever happens in 2022, and we'll no doubt speak to you again soon.
I'm sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'll see you later.
I mean, hopefully he's in. Of course.
I'm sure you may have said Toronto then, but you did mean Toulouse, I'm sure.
Did I mean Toronto?
It's because I put them in your head.
Yeah. I will leave that bit in. I don't care, because I make mistakes. Don't go back and edit them. It's more work. Interesting chat there with Jack, who I read a story about him when he was appointed as an assistant at Ottawa, which obviously we didn't talk about, because there's no point talking about something that no one knows about. Described as being involved in Sheffield's Hall of Fame, the franchise's Hall of Fame, because that's how Canadians talk about these things. But what an amazing amazing path from schoolboy at Hemel to representing Scotland in a World Cup and being in Sheffield's Hall of Fame. He's been at the coalface, and hopefully we'll see him at the coalface again next year.
He's been a great character, and again, just shows why you've got to cast your net wider. That if we think that all the talent is geographically restricted, we would never have got somebody like Jack, who came across the sport almost by accident, was very obviously, very quickly, very good at it. I think he underplays as well the time that he spent in the student game, which is an area, again, that is underdeveloped, and we need to do a hell of a lot more, because there's people that just touch the sport when they play it at student level and go on and, you know, can make a real contribution in lots of other ways, be that administratively or economically. And yeah, his talent was spotted early on. Had a great career at Sheffield, but I can remember reporting on him in the Rugby League conference, which must be 20 odd years ago, and every week he was a standout performer for the Stags. And again, that's something else that we lost. You know, it was all partly to do with development officers who helped make sure that the competition ran smoothly. It was independently governed, which again gives you a model for the future. Perhaps clubs wanted to play and be given the license to just know what their fixtures were, and that there was a disciplinary process if there needed to be, and a grand final to aim at that they all wanted to be at. But there was a neutral venue. They could represent their region. They could then go on and play in a national playoff and play for the Harry Jepson Trophy. Ultimately, out of that came sort of international selection at amateur level and then into the professional ranks. And we sort of seem to have lost all of that. But Jack is the absolute epitome of how that does work. And if we did factor that into whatever plan we may or may not be coming up with at the moment, the rewards are so much more than is on a balance sheet of paper.
Good news for Kyle Amor, and good news for broadcasters. He signed a new deal at Saints for next year, so puts off his retirement and means that he won't be on the telly as much, which is good news for all the people who are currently on the telly, because he was very good. Grand final. Oh yes, this was Kevin Brown's taking out the trophy or something.
He is.
Surprisingly, I mean, Ben Flower's retiring. He's more synonymous with the grand final, but they didn't choose him. It's a good thing. We've always said we should do more about. I know people argue who it should be who takes the trophy out. That's irrelevant. We should do more with our retiring superstars, because there seems to be a lot of them this year, and we don't make enough of them.
Absolutely. The NRL do it right. They have a triumphant ceremony that they all go on the pitch at grand final time with their family, and the fans of every club get to cheer them. You're absolutely right, and particularly with the Man of Steel not being an awards ceremony with members of the public able to go, like we had 2-3 years ago in a theatre in Salford. You know, you can't pay proper tribute to them, and you don't want to be doing here's the names of the people who are retired. Here's a hubcap. Thanks a lot. So yeah, great that he's bringing out the trophy. I'm assuming that Michael Shenton must be on holiday. Otherwise, for me, it would have been the two of them bringing it on. And Kevin Brown is an amazing story as well. You know, played in 6 major finals and didn't win any. 4 Challenge Cup finals with 4 different clubs, a World Cup final and a grand final. You know, he is one of the I will no doubt ad nauseam see his debut for Wigan, where Steve-O bought him an extra watch, didn't he? Because he was 16 and came off the bench and didn't get the man of the match. And Steve-O ran on and said, "I'll buy you one." You know, it's a great story, and it needs to have a fitting tribute at the end of it.
Oh, good old Tissot. So you've gone to all these finals and never won. Is he the modern day Gary Schofield? Is that what we're saying?
Well, he and Michael Shenton, 10 between them, not a winner's medal to polish in their retirement, but still absolutely great players at both clubs. Epitome of what rugby league stands for. Shenton, you know, as a cast through and through man who went and came back, and then was the guy on the field who instigated everything that really happened in the Darryl Powell era once he'd returned. they may not in their dotage, in their rocking chairs, need to get the polish out, but what we shouldn't do is forget the contribution. And they've both been such upright citizens in everything they've done and the way they've represented the sport. And we owe it the very least to them is to give them a proper send off. I think Kevin Brown will be a media personality. I think Michael Shenton is more of a shy, retiring violet, but they deserve their last moment in the sun.
I was listening to Rob Louis earlier by accident. I didn't want to listen to him, but he was talking about his retirement or going back to Australia and playing park football or whatever. As they all do, don't they? Grant Milton said the same. I'm going to go back and play, whatever their equivalent is in Australia. They're talking about getting a job in mining. I think it's like, what's going on? It's like everything's backwards in Australia. That's what happened over here 40 years ago, not now. 40 years ago.
As far as I know, Rob Louis has been offered a position by North Queensland Cowboys to run a house in Townsville for some of the young kids that come from great distances to sign contracts with them, and they need a mentor and they need somebody to put them on the right path. And I think that they've earmarked him to do that. Now that may not be a full-time role. He might have to go down a mine a couple of times a week as well, but just shows you, finishing at the very top of his game. He was outstanding on Friday night when Leeds finished the season beating Hull KR. Wants to again give his absolute all in however many games he's got left, held together by brown paper and string at the moment. And to think that at the end of this illustrious career, he may still have to go down the mine to make his living. We clearly, as a sport, do not pay our players enough for what they put into it.
So he came to Leeds when Tuilala Hare went to Salford, and now Tuilala Hare's off to Huddersfield with where Ian Watson is. It's all very. It's the merry-go-round of players at the bottom end of the table, just swapping clubs every couple of years, and people get excited about transfers, but you can't get excited about these things.
Tuilala Hare, the only Tongan who isn't going to St Helens.
Because, of course, Connie Hurley's, as everyone now calls him, for some reason. But there you go. League One this week, which are on at the same time as the women's games on telly. So they're on the Our League app. Workington versus Keighley, North Wales versus Doncaster. Two very, very interesting games on Sunday. The rebirth of Canadian Rugby League and all that. Cumbrian Rugby League. Is that Canada on the brain? I don't know what's going on. Rebirth of Cumbrian Rugby League.
Yeah, I have a feel for the two home teams. I know Keighley are coming good at the right time of the season. They beat North Wales last week, which is a great result, and clearly shouldn't be taken lightly. Not when you've got Scott Morell in the team. He clearly is still at that level and one of the best players in that division. But I think you're right. Feeding off Barrow's promotion, Whitehaven's run to the playoffs. There's a feel-good factor around Rugby League back in Cumbria, and Workington, I think, will get a lot of home support. And North Wales and Doncaster, you've got one team coming off a loss and the other coming off a win, so you'd think that maybe Doncaster will be slight favourites for that. But I think North Wales are a team that have overachieved this year compared to all the predictions beforehand, and being at home with internationals coming up for the Wales in a wheelchair. In that part of North Wales, I think they want to finish the season on a high and at least see if they can get to the next level.
Yeah, very exciting. Internationals coming up. Sean Wayne speaking to the media this week, which is exciting. I can't speak to him because I'm working, but I'm sure otherwise I'd ask him some important questions. What did I ask him last? If you wanted to be Gareth Southgate.
When does he start again at Wigan? Those sort of important questions.
Which reminds me, I was going to say when we talk about Adrian Lamb leaving, of course, the last time Wigan got rid of a coach, he won the grand final, I think. Yeah, because they played Warrington, so he must have done. So could happen again. Could happen again. Adrian Lamb could walk away with.
Could easily.
I want someone to check, by the way, because obviously Super League, Men's Super League has changed its logo slightly, which you can see on the League Leaders Shield and the Super League trophy itself. I think the Women's League Leaders Shield had the old Super League logo on there. Now, I know there's, Women's Super League is an RFL thing and Men's Super League is a Super League Europe thing. But I think they've just got some old League Leaders Shields out the back. And they got medals as well, which Castleford didn't get when they won the League Leaders Shield a few years ago. So that's progress for you.
Absolutely.
I think that's it. I think have we missed anything? Because I think
probably.
Yeah. But I'm confusing Canada and Cumbria, so I'm obviously the fumes from the plaster in the house are obviously getting to my head, and that's before I've got to do some painting later. It's not good. It's not good. But
there's no end to your talent. No end.
There's no beginning to it either. Other than that, I think we're looking. This is the business end. We're looking forward to exciting rugby league with things on it. Things will be sorted in the next few weeks, and that's exciting. And God knows what we'll do after the 10th of October. Well, I've got the internationals. What we'll do in November. Build up to the Christmas challenge. Leeds have got a Christmas kit, and people have got upset about it. I'm thinking it's a kit they wear at Christmas.
They do that every year.
Important. Yeah, it's not important. No.
Buy it or don't buy it, but they will always be wearing a novelty kit at Christmas.
I like the Rhinos kit. I like the Rhino, Save the Rhinos kit. That was good.
I'm just not sure about grey. I think grey is a difficult one to market in the sports arena.
I mean, I did say at the start of the season I was a big fan of Wigan's away kit, but I went to look on their website today. It's still 30 quid. You know, I'm not paying 30 quid for a Wigan's away kit. So you've lost a customer there, Wigan. I mean, where would I wear it anyway? That's the main thing. But on that bombshell, just wait till all next year.
In St Helens.
Yeah, everyone's going to get upset about next year kits. That's coming soon. So it's all to be excited. But the magazine is out for it has arrived. I've read it. I've started writing next month's column, which is even more exciting.
Wow.
Rugby League was on Antiques road trip this week, and it wasn't the
really
members of the Yorkshire United squad. No. Yeah, they did a.
Was it Gary Schofield?
No, but it was his old mucker. Lee Crooks was on there. Didn't even have to put subtitles on either, as he was talking about Clive Sullivan. So it was great for the people who've never heard. Which I understand people who watch BBC One in the afternoon probably won't have a clue what rugby league is. So it's good.
They weren't auctioning off Gary Schofield then.
No, not that golden cat we bought him a few years ago.
Going once, going twice, going down the pub. Gary Schofield.
They're trying to sell a knackered old sofa though, which he's probably reminiscent of Hull's form this year. But people think we're picking on Hull. We're not.
No, I think people from Hull are picking on Hull at the moment. We're just reflecting the mood.
Yeah, we're pro Hull KR at the minute, but when the winds change, we'll be with you. The Robin is bobbing along at the minute, and long may it bob along. Yeah, that'll do. Phil's lost his headphones. We'll just end it there and just go, right, we'll be back. I mean, hopefully, barring disasters, we'll be back on Monday. I haven't got a guest yet, but John Davison will join us in a couple of weeks, which is good. But we'll be
James
back
Simpson says he'll come on, but he won't be controversial. So I said, well, you're not coming on there.
No. When's he coming in? We'll get him in. We'll get him in. And
we'll get him in.
We'll get him in. And we'll be back talking rugby league. By the way, last week's episode, because the Apple charts came through to me, last week's episode with Simon Johnson, we were the 6th biggest podcast on the rugby charts. We were above the Super League one. So I want to whisper that.
Not above Brian Moore, surely.
We were. He wasn't even on there. So we must have timed it right that we were on a Friday and he hadn't put an episode out. So we were behind like some nonsense rugby union stuff, but I don't know who they are. But, I mean, the charts are nonsense anyway. We were 6th behind 3 episodes of the Rugby Pod, whatever that is, the Egg Chasers Rugby Podcast, and Rugby Pass Offload. I don't know what any of those are. So that's good.
Well, if it's Rugby Pass Offload, it can't be union.
No, it can't be, can it? And this 12-man thing, it's just a nonsense. It won't happen.
Especially in August, it's not going to happen.
They can't even agree to send players off on international tours, can they? Half the time. So we'll be all right. We'll with our Super Nines thing that people want, we'll be all right. We'll be all right. Well, that'll do. We'll be back. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, please, on YouTube, because we're getting close to 2,000, but we keep I don't know if we're losing real subscribers or like fake Russians. So if you're Russian and you're real, thanks for watching. I don't know what goodbye is in Russian.
Come on, you bots.